It's the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat and Joe. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Anime Movie Podcast, the AMP. We are your hosts. I am Joe Welke.
I am Kat Hamilton.
And today we've got an episode for you on the movie Summer Wars. It is a 2009 Mamoru Hosoda. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it or if
that's how you have to say it every time.
Oh, I
just
don't want to.
Mid sentence, you have to
I
pronounce
don't want
it just
to.
like that.
It felt wrong doing it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's who did the movie. It's directed by him, I think written by him. And yeah, we're going to discuss it. We're going to do a spoiler-free review. We'll talk about a couple of the key points of the movie, and then after a little while, we're going to talk about some more spoilerific stuff. Yeah. So, Kat, how did you feel about Summer Wars?
Are we going into AMP so soon?
No. What do you think the story... Here we go.
Go on.
What do you think the story was of Summer Wars? If you could sum it up in one or two sentences.
One or two?
That's the challenge.
Listen, Joe Wilkie, I've never been known for my brevity. This is a challenge.
Well, those were the two sentences, and that had nothing to do with...
I wasn't prepared for a challenge. All right,
I'll give you 3 sentences.
Oh, they're going to be long sentences, just saying.
Run-on sentences.
Run-on sentences, yeah. A mathlete, math genius, if you will, in high school, and his friend are tip-tapping away on Oz, which is a ubiquitous kind of VR internet world, are approached by a girl who says, hey, I need somebody to come out to the countryside with me to go to a family event because my grandmother's turning 90. One of them agrees to go. And in a strange turn of events, there is an email that is sent that has some kind of a puzzle in it. This mathematician kid solves the puzzle, and then the entire virtual world that everything relies on gets turned upside down.
Yeah. Everything hits the fan.
Yeah.
Everything gets crazy. Yeah, that's basically what we got going on in Summer Wars. It's really interesting. I think, I always talk about when we do a Hosoda movie about the animation being flat and like less detailed than some other anime.
I guess matte might be the more
matte and less detailed. Like especially in the hair, there's not a lot of shadows and stuff. I know I really hammer that point home, but again, not a bad thing. I like the choice of it. I think it's really interesting, and there's some more of that in this.
I think it works.
Yeah, it totally works as like a stylistic choice that is very apparent in all of, at least of the ones that I've seen in Hosoda's movies. It's always there, and I feel like it's like a little trademark of him. Like if you showed me a movie and I didn't know that it was him, but it had that animation style, I'd be like, this feels like very Hosoda.
That's literally happened to us.
Yeah. But there's also interesting elements because in the digital world of Oz, everyone has an avatar, and the animation that's present in Oz is quite a bit different than the real world animation.
Yeah. I think the character designs are different.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because avatars are more sort of cartoonish and caricatures. But I think I know where you're leading to, but I want you to make the point because I think you're the one who pointed it out.
Yeah, there's always something in the Hosoda movies where like if there's a trippy sequence or if something is askew or not the normal, characters are outlined in red. And that's what happens whenever they're in the digital world. The avatar characters are outlined in red, and even some items are outlined in red.
It's basically anything that's like not IRL.
Yeah.
Okay, in real life.
Yeah.
So it could be a dream sequence. In this case, it's you're in the digital world currently, or you're in a memory.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool looking thing that is in a lot of his
because
movies.
it's like a dark red.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a differentiation. And
Hmm.
I think that a lot of the time for filmmakers there is some kind of a precedent for a visual representation of not either not the normal time, you're not in current time, or not the normal situation. So
Hmm.
again, imagination or looking into the past, and often it gets vignetted or it gets like desaturated.
Yeah. Or there's
Um,
like a glow.
yeah, there's something a little bit weird where like, oh, I'm in a dream sequence or I'm in a flashback or whatever. But I think the red outline is very unique to Hosoda
Hmm.
and it's effective and I like it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I always talk about his animation style and I like it, but it's very distinct and different from, and that's one of the key things I feel like that are in his movies that sets them apart from just, your average anime movie. Like the animation in his movies is very unique, stylistic, and cool.
And I like how his sort of main characters and what you could imagine as being whatever you'd see on the cells is in stark contrast to some of the backgrounds, which are sometimes, I think, so representative of his experience as a oil painter
Hmm.
because he studied oil painting as a university student. But some of the backgrounds are so beautiful. But I think he uses it wisely. Like there are some films that I've watched where it's like every single background is just this incredible like HD, desktop screensaver kind of
Hmm.
situation, and it gets overused and it's kind of overwhelming. But I think that he uses some really good moments to be like, all right, this is when to make it beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, this is when to drive this moment home. And he uses it to such great effect.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times when people do those backgrounds, it's like a wow factor moment, like,
Mm,
wow, look at how detailed this is. But it doesn't really fit in with the story and the characters in front of it. It doesn't look, something looks off.
yeah.
I've never felt that way watching any of these Hosoda
No,
movies.
like, I totally understand what you're saying. It's like the background kind of takes over the scene
Yeah.
because it's so intense and so over the top. And you're paying attention to that instead of what's going on. So it's not enhancing the moment,
Hmm.
it's taking over the moment.
Yeah. And I think that you know a little bit about his history as like an oil painter, right?
Hmm.
What what was that all about again? What's his story, his background story?
Yeah, basically, he went to university to study oil painting.
Hmm.
He also drew some manga. He was a big Studio Ghibli fan. He tried to become a part of the Studio Ghibli company. He was rejected. At some point, he actually got hired to direct a film.
Hmm.
I want to say it was Howl's Moving Castle, but I don't feel super certain about that. I have to look that up. But there were some differences between the company's direction and his vision, and he was subsequently let go.
Hmm.
And then he started doing his own thing. He eventually formed his own company and started making his own films. And honestly, I love this director.
Yeah, we've done a few. We've watched a couple of his films, and there's not a lot of misses in his filmography, I feel.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is as strong as Studio Ghibli's filmography, which
Yeah.
isn't necessarily as prolific, but also you have to recognize that while Studio Ghibli started out as Miyazaki directing every single film, it has continued beyond Miyazaki. Miyazaki was supposed to retire initially after or like before Mononoke, and then he decided to do it anyway. And then he decided he was going to retire and he decided to do Ponyo. Like he was kind of like, he kept coming out of retirement. Um, but then after that, all the films that have come out subsequently are different directors who sort of kind of share this Studio Ghibli idea.
Hmm.
Um, so so yeah, while Studio Ghibli is so prolific, it's not one director now.
Yeah.
And Hosoda is just one guy, and he's come out with some really heavy hitters, like some really good films.
Yeah. I mean, he directed Mirai, and that one was I think it's only the second anime film to be nominated for an Academy Award. The
Mm.
other one being Spirited Away, which won. But he started his own studio. I think he's called Studio Chizu, and I mean he's just putting out bangers, dude. Like
Honestly,
he's
yeah.
and it's like I want to say like 2 to 4 years he's got a movie out because
All right,
this
let's list the movies.
yeah, this one was okay. Let's start chronological order. 2007, I believe, was Girl Who Leapt Through Time. This is 2009. Then, oh dang it,
Wolf Children, which is
no, I think The
2011.
Boy and the Beast is before Wolf Children.
Should we look this up and redo this part?
I'm looking it up right now, so we don't have to redo this part.
Joe, I think we should redo this part.
Girl Who Leapt Through Time, 2006. Summer Wars, 2009. Wolf Children, you were right. 2012. Boy and the Beast, 2015. Mirai, 2018. And he's currently working on an untitled upcoming film.
Ooh, that's so exciting. I
I
like
know.
like genuinely, I am so excited about him coming out with a new film. Immediately, I will want to watch this film because I'll be curious.
Yeah,
And I'll
I
be
mean,
disappointed if it's a flop.
yeah. And with what he's shown so far, like we've seen, I think all of his. This was the last one that we needed to see, I think. Maybe.
As far as his sort of theatrical releases,
Yeah.
who knows what he made in college?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't care.
But I mean, really great director, really great
Mm.
movies, really good
Like I
stuff,
think
really unique too.
yeah, and I think that he's an auteur,
Mm.
which is a French term that people who are very into film will throw around willy nilly about a director who has a very particular vision and whose vision kind of is strung through all of their films. So you watch their film and you think, oh, it's this person.
Mm-hmm.
That they're the author of a very particular experience that explores particular themes in a particular style. And they own that voice that they have, and you can hear that voice in every product that they come out with. And I think that Miyazaki has that, and I think that Hosoda has that, and I think that Satoshi Kon has that.
Yeah.
And of the big anime directors, those are the ones that stand out to me where I'm just like, oh, I feel your style.
Yeah.
I get that you have a style, and I see it, and I feel it, and I hear it, you know?
I feel like Hosoda, for me at least, is the most consistent with that style.
Yeah.
And he nailed it. He's nailed that style.
I feel like Hosoda, focuses on this kind of magical realism kind of situation where whatever's happening is happening in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be happening a few doors down if you lived in Tokyo. But it could be happening in present day, but there's these magical elements, and sometimes it's like technology used as magic.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like this one is the most grounded in reality because all of this stuff that happens in this movie with like a digital world where people have avatars, I mean, it's not as big as it is in this movie where it's controlling a lot of what the world does and how it operates. That stuff already exists. There's no
Yeah.
like out of like magical things happening in it. But once you're in the world of Oz, which is the digital world, it's crazy magical, all that.
Yeah, I think that all of the technology exists to make this world happen,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it not so much magical, but it makes it feel very near future
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you can imagine everything in this being true. And I think that's one of the things that's so effective about this film is that it's extraordinarily topical. Um, partly because of the fact that there's like minor apocalyptic kind of things happening where it's like, oh, this is what it would be like if the world was thrown into chaos,
Yeah.
aka 2020. So there's some really relatable moments where you're like, oh, that would happen if that stopped working, or if that stopped working, or these things that we're used to or we take for granted suddenly aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
But then also, exploring a lot of themes of social media and your life running, in real life concurrently with whatever your sort of social media persona or avatar might be. These ideas of digital versus analog, ideas of people being completely reliant on technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's also themes of family and expectations that family have of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories within this larger story. Like, there's
Yeah.
a load of themes. There's a lot going on in this movie, but it doesn't feel necessarily jumbled or certain things are forgotten about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are a couple of things I feel like could have been done better,
Okay.
but I feel like I have to wait till spoilers to get to that part.
Sure.
But it does feel like there's a lot of spinning plates and not, if he's spinning, 15 plates, maybe one plate falls,
Right.
which that's damn impressive,
Like the man can juggle.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie.
And I think one of the most impressive things about Hosoda is the way that he juggles whatever else is going on throughout the entire film, whether it's heavy or light, is that he manages to throw in some really genuinely funny moments.
Oh, yeah.
Like 25% of this movie is a genuine comedy.
Yeah.
And I find that so impressive. Like, laugh out loud funny. Like, not chuckle, not like hee, I get it, you're trying to be funny. Like, I am laughing.
Mhm.
like I'm glad I didn't drink something before that happened, because I would be spitting it over myself and embarrassing myself in front of my quarantine buddy Joe over here while we're watching this movie, you know? Those kinds of moments.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it's inconsistent either, because a lot of times when there's a movie where there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's moments of, there's really funny things going on, and then there's drama, and then there's action. It could be like, what's the tone of this movie? Like, this tone is
Yeah.
all over the place, but a lot of his stuff feels very, like, I guess, grounded in reality, because there are dramatic and actiony and funny moments. And
Yeah.
he is so good at getting all of that into a movie and making it not feel all over the place.
I totally agree. And I think that that's a really rare skill.
Oh, yeah,
And I
totally.
think, there's a few things as far as screenwriting goes that I'll bring up later in the spoiler section that I think are incredible tropes to use and things to do that make moments and parts of the script just so good, so motivated.
Mhm.
He has setups and payoffs. There's not a lot of things where you go, where did that come from?
Yeah.
The plot holes that exist are kind of like, well, that was random, but you're also like, but I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
Like you let it go immediately.
Yeah.
You're not like, no, I can't let go of that thing. We have to keep talking about that thing. And you're like, yeah, but didn't really matter. But everything else, it's like, he set this up. You saw that in another scene.
Yeah.
There was a moment or two of this where you could have been like, oh, that's going to be important later. And I think that that's so good on a suspense level, watching a film, to get little bits of foreshadowing or be like, oh, I wonder if that's going to come up later and be important. Like, yes, it is, because
Yeah.
this man knows how to write a fucking script.
Yeah, and like you said, I feel like if there are plot hole moments, they're so minor and not really related to the main big story that it's like, I didn't even realize that was a plot hole unless somebody pointed it out to me, and then it's like, I don't even really care.
Yeah.
Um, aside from maybe The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, which I have.
Joe, we can't bring up The Girl Who Leapt
I
Through
know.
Time.
Look, I know. You've heard our episode on it. If you've heard our episode on that, you know my issues with that movie. If you haven't, go back and listen to that one. So, the main math whiz guy, his name is Kenji. The girl who asked him to come on to the trip with him, her name is Natsuki.
His best friend is Sakuma, who gets left back at sort of like the computer lab at his high school, but comes up a couple of times throughout the film.
Yeah, and then there's Natsuki's cousin Kazuma, who is a computer whiz. He's really big in the Oz community as I guess kind of like a like a fighting game champion.
Yeah, there's kind of like there's different communities throughout Oz, and he's in basically some combat
Yeah,
ones.
like the martial arts community, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's Natsuki's family, which is very large. Um, a lot of people, hard to name them all. But the important ones are her great grandmother, who is just called Granny, I think.
She has a name. It's said once, but for the most part, she's called Granny throughout the film. So we will call her Granny.
And then there is Wabisuke, who is the kind of black sheep of the family, prodigal son type person.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that covers like a lot of the main cast.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you're with this girl at her very, very extended family get together, and there's so many characters that it's hard to keep track of, and I don't think you're supposed to be able to keep track of it, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a couple that are like tropes where you have like the one slightly, masculine mom who's breastfeeding at the same time is like being really into baseball.
Yeah.
And then you get the mustachioed man who's very into squid. And you're like, he's an uncle of somebody. Like you never get sort of like a whole family tree, and I don't think they try to do that. They give you a couple of kind of archetypes to work with to kind of immediately be like, oh, I get what kind of family member that is. But
I think they illustrate this really well with, and this isn't really a spoiler, but they're having dinner with the whole extended family. And then, so Kenji is just there. He's meeting everybody for the first time. And very quickly, everybody goes through their name, how they're related to Natsuki. And there's probably 20 characters in this, and they go through all of them in 1 minute, it seems like.
yeah.
And it's just like one of those things where, if you go to somebody's family reunion that you're not related to, and you just get all these names and you're overwhelmed.
And it's not like your girlfriend or somebody that you're committed to where you're like, I'm going to try and remember these because this person's really important to me and I think we're going to be together for years, so I need to know their family. This is more like we're just kind of seeing each other, I guess, right now.
Yeah.
I just kind of need to know enough names to get me through tonight.
Yeah. It's one of those things where if you were in that situation, the next time you saw somebody, you'd be like, hey, I'm sorry. It was just like I had so many names thrown at me.
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Yeah.
So that, I think they illustrated that really well because the extended family is huge.
And that makes him so much more relatable because you're like, what the fuck? There's so many characters right now. I'm supposed to remember all these characters. And maybe when you're taking notes on the film and you're about to talk about it, that becomes more important to you immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But as an audience, they're like, listen, you have 26 characters in front of you, but also don't worry about it. It's fine. But we're also going to make it like a kind of a funny moment to be like, this person, this person, this person. And he's like, I'm never going to remember any of that. And you're like, that's a nice, relatable moment.
So, yeah, a lot of people that they do kind of factor into the story in minor-ish ways, some more major than others. But the main players, I feel, Kenji, Math Whiz, Natsuki, the girl who brings him to meet her family.
Sakuma, best friend. Back at the high school in the computer lab.
Mm-hmm. Kazuma, who's the little cousin who's big in the Oz community, martial arts champion type person. Granny, Wabisuke, the black sheep, prodigal son type guy. And yeah, I think that covers the main players that factor in largely into this story.
That's definitely the main players minus any spoilers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of that.
Spoilers?
Should we get into spoilers?
Yes, we should get into spoilers.
You're about to say fucking spoilers and you held your tongue.
I did.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
you
God,
can't spoil this.
Right?
Don't spoil Spoiler talk, anime movie podcast spoiler talk.
Yeah, so the only character that we didn't talk about who's kind of a big player is Love Machine. And what's interesting about Love Machine is that they are an AI that ends up getting completely out of control. And kind of goes on this sort of Joker rampage in Oz which is very, I just want to see the world burn. Like it's
Hmm.
kind of a cheeky apocalypse, you know? It's like there's no specific aim.
Hmm.
Like yes, like eventually people are starting to be in danger based on some kind of tertiary causes.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the a big reason why Granny died even.
Yes.
So Granny dies in
Spoiler.
we're in spoiler talk.
Yeah,
Granny fucking bites the dust, baby.
yeah. She's
Um
pushing daisies, except mostly she just hangs out in a blanket dead for a while.
yeah, next to a bunch of ice cubes which were not supposed to be there. Fucking asshole cousin that moved them. Anyway,
Don't even get me started.
with Love Machine, the AI that's kind of fucking around Oz and making society be turned upside down, kind of. It disables like traffic lights, medical stuff. Like, it seems like there's a worldwide kind of blackout or things just aren't working properly. And a big reason why Granny dies is because she was on a certain type of medicine, and if anything happened to her, her son would get a ping notification on his phone, and because Oz is like all fucked up, he didn't get the ping to notice that Granny had fallen ill or her heart rate had
It's
changed or
like her
something.
vitals are connected to an app, and if any of those fall into a zone that aren't healthy, then
Yeah,
it pings him.
yeah, and because he didn't get that ping, he didn't know, so Granny dies, and that is a really, I think that's a really powerful indication of like, this is how important this Oz thing is, and this is
Hmm.
how it can affect loads and loads and loads of people. Because,
Yeah.
up until that point, you see it, fucking with traffic lights and water mains and stuff, which is like, yeah, that would totally fuck over a lot of people. At one point, every old person's like life alert goes off, and so emergency services have to go to all of them to make sure that they're okay, which would be very annoying, and it
Yeah.
could really take people away from where things are actually needed. But when you see why Granny dies, I think that's really like, oh, this could really, really kill people.
Yeah, before that moment, it feels very sort of playful poltergeist.
Mm.
Suddenly like a water main blows or like all the traffic lights are going crazy. So, there's these huge traffic jams. There's these little things that are kind of like, oh, somebody who's feeling really mischievous be like, tee hee 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 hee. I have no emotional stake in this world. I'll just like screw up these random things and watch it suddenly not work. But then that's the first moment you're like, this is actually much more serious than I could imagine. It's not just like happy fun playtime. And it does feel kind of apocalyptic
Hmm.
watching the world that you would expect to work a certain way suddenly not work in those ways and trying to adjust to that.
Yeah, it reminded me of, I think 10 or 15 years ago in New York City, there was a like a citywide blackout,
Yeah.
and everybody just started, and it wasn't for a long time. I think it was maybe like an hour or two that there was a citywide blackout. And it just broke New York City for that time period. Like, people were on the highway getting out of their cars being like, what the fuck's happening?
Like,
Because
did all
so
the
much.
subways stop?
Yeah, I think the subways did stop because so much of that stuff runs on
Electricity.
electricity, and
Yeah.
if you don't have that, it will stop society.
Yeah.
And this Love Machine Oz takedown did that on like a global scale. And just seeing how it affected New York for like, an hour, or how it might have been longer. I don't quite remember all of the details on that.
Yeah.
But if it happened globally, that would be insane.
Yeah, there was this really interesting point that an anthropology professor made when I was in university, which was talking about the idea of sort of quote unquote primitive versus more advanced societies. And he was like, look at these people. Here are the things they're able to do. They can hunt for themselves, they can make their own food, they can build a boat, they can do whatever. Now, their ancestors had built a boat, gone to a place, and suddenly they discovered some other things. They stopped doing all the stuff their ancestors did. Suddenly, they have no idea how to live off of, the actual land,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So while they might feel more advanced than their ancestors, they're actually reliant on things that make them weaker.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we are completely reliant on the internet or these other kinds of technologies. Our entire worlds are made of people trying to make things easier for us and to entice us to pay them to make things easier for us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, most of us have no idea what to do in the world if we didn't have all of this support.
Yeah, it's like I think I sent it to you that this comedian named Nate Bargatze has a great joke about that, about how if he were to go back in time to, like the 1920s or something, he'd be just the most useless man
Yeah.
ever. And he'd be technically more knowledgeable and more advanced, but he wouldn't know. He's like, I would go back in time and see somebody using like a rotary phone and be like, oh, in the future, we have phones in our pockets that are also cameras and they also have music on them. And then someone would be like, oh, how do you make it? He's like, oh, I mean, I don't know how to make it, but we have them. And he's like, I'd probably be the only person that go back in time and be worse off, just end up being a waiter at a restaurant or something, because he just doesn't know how to function. And that goes to your point, and it goes to this movie's point where so much of our lives are reliant, and especially if in this world where this Oz thing, so much of it, so much of people's lives are invested in Oz. Like you can, like your bank information. You can
Yeah.
buy a house, you can buy cars, and you can also like, play fucking Avatar kickboxing games and shit. It really would be like if just all of the internet went down. Because, our banking information's on the internet. My health insurance stuff's on the internet.
And at the beginning of the film, there's this kind of voiceover that's like, welcome to Oz. We have the best security, and it's absolutely impossible to
You
get
have the
into.
perfect voice for this. You should have been in that movie. You should do voiceover work, dude.
But essentially, you're brought into this world, and you have this kind of AI voice who speaks to you very softly and tells you things about the program. And it's not quite English, but it's also not American, but it's very soft, and you can trust it.
And it's very digital. And you'd learn to trust the computer, lady.
And, it's telling you about how the security system is impenetrable, and that it's the most advanced encrypting software, et cetera, et cetera. And immediately as a viewer, you go, oh, that's going to get hacked into.
Yeah.
That's done for.
It's like the Titanic being like, even God couldn't sink the ship. And God's like, oh, yeah, and rolls up his sleeves.
That's how I felt when I listened to that. And I was like, oh, that's getting hacked into, isn't it? Oh, that's cute. Okay. Yeah, that was the end of that point, really.
Oh, okay.
Now you say some stuff.
That's how podcasts work? The thing that I felt like was weird is after they do that introduction, they explain what Oz is and how it works and everything. They give you a rundown and they show you all of the things that you can do on Oz. And then one of the last things that they mention is like, and this is John and Yoko.
Oh,
they are the
yes.
guardians of Oz.
No. The guardian whales.
Yeah. And obviously a reference to John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
Yeah.
They didn't guard anything. Those whales were fucking worthless.
No, they come up later.
They come up at the end.
As a cameo, but they're not protecting anything.
Yeah, they don't. I feel like that didn't really get paid off. Like when I was talking about all the spinning plates happening, there might be two that fell off for me. Like that whale thing, I felt like didn't really pay off in a meaningful way. They do come back in the end, and they, when Natsuki's battling Love Machine, and they like donates avatars to her or something.
Yeah, I mean they come back, but I absolutely agree. I don't understand why they were John and Yoko. At first I thought well, this is just part of world building.
I feel like if
but
you
we don't
call
explain the role of those
yeah,
we're just like, we're just going to make a slight Beatles reference and they're going to be floating whales and weird children acid dream.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like if they called John and Yoko out so hard in the beginning, like they're taking you through and showing you all the different chat rooms and translation stuff that can happen. And you're like, okay, this is world building. And then they're like, and these are the Guardians, John and Yoko. And you're like, oh, these are going to be major players in this movie. And then
Sure.
Love Machine just runs a rampage on this thing, and John and Yoko are nowhere to be found. You don't see them attempting to stop this AI, and they only come back around at the very end
Hmm.
to supply some kind of support for Natsuki, who is attempting to take down this AI. It's like, why weren't they more involved in trying to take this down?
It almost feels like there was a scene that was cut from the film where they were a
Yeah.
bigger player. It almost feels like that.
Yeah, it just felt weird to me.
Now here's kind of an overarching thing that I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, both the sort of morality of lying
Mm-hmm.
in situations, and also the idea of having an avatar or a
Mm.
second life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I thought it was very significant that Natsuki introduces Kenji to her family as her boyfriend, which is,
Fiance, even.
yeah, she corrects herself. She goes, boyfriend, no, actually, fiance, which is in and of itself an avatar
Mm-hmm.
in real life.
Well, that's the thing about that whole situation is Kenji, who goes on the trip with her, didn't know what he was getting into. He gets there. Natsuki turns to him and she's like, hey, whatever I say, you just need to go along with it, okay? And Kenji's like, wait, what? What do you mean? What am I going to have to go along with? She's like, just promise me that you're going to go along with me. And he's like, okay. And it's kind of obvious that he like kind of has a crush on her,
Hmm.
but he's such a math whiz nerd or whatever. And he's like, oh, I can't talk to girls. Blah. Um,
Sorry.
so then she turns around and they're the reason why they've all gathered, like the whole family, and Natsuki's bringing Kenji is because it's Granny's 90th birthday party, and she said that she was going to introduce Granny to her fiance.
Hmm.
So now Kenji's like, "What the fuck? What? I don't know what to do." It's like, bro, then you shouldn't have fucking promised Natsuki that you're gonna play this fucking large improv game right now. Granny in this movie is the MVP of this movie.
Yeah, she's so good.
She
She's so
fucking rocks for the half of the movie that she's alive for it, or three quarters of it.
strongest female character award of the year goes to Granny for
Yeah.
2009.
She fucking rocked the shit out of this movie.
In so many ways as well.
Yeah.
Like even physically.
Yeah, she ruled, dude.
Yeah.
First thing that we really see of her is her introduction to Kenji, who she thinks is the fiance, and she's
Mhm.
grilling him, kind of being like, "Are you man enough to take care of my great granddaughter?" And Kenji's like, I don't know, I don't know." And then Granny's like, "Are you man enough to die for my grandmother?" And he's like, "Oh, Jesus!" And he's like, she says, "I just want to know that my great granddaughter is protected. Will you protect her and take care of her?" And he's like, "I will certainly try my best."
Yeah.
And I think Granny's kind of like, "I accept that. That's I guess as best as anybody can do."
That's a great answer. Yeah, you're not guaranteeing that it's going to happen because you have no idea what's going to come up.
Yeah.
So it's reasonable but also noble
Yeah.
in some ways.
And then shit hits the fan really quickly for this whole fiance lie, because after Kenji accidentally doesn't solve, but gets close enough to solving
Thinks he solves.
the riddle that Love Machine had sent out.
And Love Machine is
the AI. Hold on, we'll get to that. I just had a malfunction in my brain.
I saw that happen.
Yeah. So Kenji accidentally makes Love Machine kind of take down the whole internet, and
I think at this point, it's fair to say that he doesn't know what Love Machine is. He just gets a
Yeah.
mysterious email
Yeah,
that has
it's
a puzzle. And this film is so big on play and puzzle and games as
mhm.
like this thematic thing. And especially because he's a mathematician. So, math to him is a game. So he gets this email from an anonymous sender and it's like, can you solve this?
Mhm.
Which is this great like little challenge for him. And in the middle of the night, he's like, can I ever?
Yeah,
And
he's
he
never met
tries.
a puzzle that he didn't love.
Exactly. And then the next morning he wakes up and these little kids who are running around the house because all the family are there, they're poking him and prodding him and being like, you're a criminal, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, God, children say the weirdest things. And then he gets up and he sees that his face is on the TV with a black bar over his eyes or
Mhm.
whatever. But everybody immediately knows that it's him. And because of the fact that he has this lie going with Natsuki, who, he didn't choose to have it,
Yeah, no.
that they're like, we looked into all these things. We looked into this and that and the other thing. And all of these things are lies. You're a con man. You're a criminal.
Yeah, because he accidentally, mistakenly broke the internet
Yeah,
by answering a riddle. So then he is found out. I'm a little upset that Natsuki didn't come forward and be like, all of that stuff was a lie because I wanted to protect Granny. She just kind of, and that's one of the plates that falls for
mm,
me,
okay.
is she disappears for like the whole basic, for me, in my opinion, the whole middle of the movie. Like we get the setup of her being
Mm,
like, "Come on to meet my family." Then once Kenji's found out, I feel like she just really fades into the background. And I thought that she was going to be a main character mainly cuz she's like the front person on the cover of the movie. Judging books by its cover, not good, but
sure.
and I feel like she really disappears.
After we watched this movie, I looked at the sort of, cover of the DVD again. And I thought to myself, why is this the cover?
Yeah.
I also thought, why is this called Summer Wars?
Yeah.
And I think that it would have been very difficult to choose a title for this film.
Name it Love Machine. Then people be like, "What the fuck kind of hentai is this?"
Now, I think it might have to do with the fact that the game that they play a few times during this film, and then ends up being sort of final boss battle,
Hmm.
if you will. Um, I think it's called Fanamuda.
Don't look at me. All I know is I feel like it was called Koi Koi.
Koi Koi was something that you say during the game.
Yeah.
I looked up the rules for this game, and it's based on months.
Mm.
And it's based on matching cards that are supposed to be related to certain months of the year. So
Mm.
I kind of wonder if Summer Wars, because you're talking about months, you're talking about seasons potentially, that maybe it has something to do with that, especially because that game ends up being such a pivotal part of the resolution of the story.
No, the game is called Koi Koi.
Okay. Well
Played
then,
with Hanafuda cards.
oh,
So I guess it's like, how we have regular decks of cards and we play loads of different games.
sure.
I guess it's like that.
You might have playing cards, and instead you'd have Hanafuda cards.
Yeah.
So you're playing Koi Koi with Hanafuda cards.
Hmm.
Okay. Sure. I read more about the rules of that game and I got lost.
I mean, that I watched an anime that was all about mahjong, and I
Yeah.
was lost. But it was a very compelling and gripping anime, so I kept watching because it was like very dramatic. I think we really need to address a big elephant, big plot point in the room is that Love Machine, the AI, was created by the prodigal son, black sheep of the family, Wabisuke.
Yes, that's very important.
That is we kind of glanced over that until now, and we're going
So,
to address the shit out of it.
yeah, we're going to address that so hard.
Voiced by my favorite voice actor in all of anime, J. Michael Tatum. Fantastic voice. Love that guy's voice.
Sexy ass voice.
So good.
Um, what's the sort of general idea you get about this about Wabisuke's backstory? with this family?
I was a little confused about it,
Okay.
but here's what I kind of got
Yeah.
from it is that he was, I guess, a bastard child of the great grandfather.
Okay.
And Granny took him in and raised him as like one of her own, but he was kind of shunned from the rest of the family because he wasn't purely that lineage. He was like an out of wedlock. The husband cheated on, maybe it was Granny's dad or something, or Granny's husband. I'm not quite sure. I'm a little
There was
foggy on that.
a lot of talk about the clan and about the lineage.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
he's like an offshoot of that
sure.
because somebody cheated on their spouse with, I think, with somebody else. And then Wabisque was the child of that. And I'm guessing it is Granny or one of Granny's kids
Mm.
because Wabisque is pretty young. So yeah, it might be Granny. But Granny like took him in and was like, look, I'm not gonna treat you like some outcast. You're gonna have a family with us. But the rest of the family looks at him as like, you're not part of our family,
Okay.
even though he's like adopted in. And so he, I feel like, is always trying to prove himself to that family to be like, I am part of this family and I can do and achieve good things. But his way of doing it doesn't jive well with that family because like he wants to go to America for school and everyone there like kind of stays around in Japan, the same town. So I feel like they kind of look at him as like, you think you're too good for the family and you don't really take care of us, and I guess just kind of black sheepish. They hadn't seen
Yeah.
him for 10 years.
There is some big black sheep energy going on here.
Yeah. And the instant that he shows up on screen, though, I knew I was like, this guy's a bad dude. But is he a bad dude? Do you think he is a bad dude?
No, but I think that this is one of those times where the idea of ego was brought up for me during this film, especially when it comes to family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Natsuki shows this like, I have this ego where I need to feel good enough for my grandmother, which means that I'm have to be engaged by now. And there's all sorts of little moments where it's like, oh, that's an ego thing, and how that can kind of get you in trouble. And what you kind of learn is that like he went off to America, he used money that Granny had given him, and he ends up being this amazing sort of programmer,
Mm-hmm.
and he creates an AI. And this AI is something that the US government gets interested in and ends up taking that technology, and then the technology runs out of control.
Yeah. And that's what becomes Love Machine.
Yeah. And, so when he comes back to the family, he's trying to still be cool. It's like this ego thing of like, I have this ego about my work, but I also have this ego about like, I can't seem weak, or like I wanted to come back to my family, or I wanted to submit to a matriarch for her validation.
Mm.
I need that to feed my ego, but my ego also says that I can't do that without feeling weak. Um, so he goes there, and then he's like, "Oh, that's weird. I didn't even know it was your birthday soon."
Yeah.
Which, later you find out he absolutely knew that it was her birthday, which is not, shocking. Most things about this character are just like immediately like, "Oh, that's what's going to happen."
Yeah, and I feel like if you've been shunned by a family, you might come back with a little bit of distaste for them and a little like, yeah, go fuck yourself. I'm only here for Granny's birthday or whatever. You know what I mean?
Or a little more tail between your legs.
I think that another reason that he was shunned, it had to do with the money. I think it was something that he may have sold land that was given to him or
I
that
can't I
Granny.
can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it had something to do with that because when he comes back and he explains to Granny that yes, he did start Love Machine, but he did it to make her proud
Yeah.
because he's like, I sold it to the government. I created this amazing artificial intelligence that the government was interested in and they bought it from me. And look at all this money that I have now. We can buy back the land that I sold, or we have money like we did back when Grandpa was alive, and we can
Yeah.
do this. And that's when Granny takes a fucking lance and almost kills the dude.
It was so great.
It was amazing. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Granny's kind of on her last legs," and then she like pulls out a fucking giant lance, and she's like really going to town with it. Like she's about to cut a
Yeah. I
motherfucker.
mean, that sort of samurai armor has a lot of airtime. And I
Oh yeah.
kept wondering if there was some metaphorical visual reference for having that samurai like armor on screen. And there's also a samurai armor thing in Oz that's an avatar that looks very, very similar to the one that she has in her home. And I kept trying to like find a tie and I
Mm,
couldn't find it.
yeah.
Exactly. Except that like she's a fucking warrior. And what's like a big thing that came up for me in this film was the difference in generations and you know their experiences.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, in this world they're experiencing a cheeky apocalypse. Like somebody who's like, I just want to see the world burn. I'm just gonna like fuck things up, but I have no specific intention to, you know, I have no goal really. I just want to cause chaos.
Yeah.
You know, I think Granny has this moment where she's like, this is a war.
Yeah.
And
That
she
was the
puts her fist down.
I fucking love that scene,
And
dude.
then a kid, you know, like one of the little kids is like, what's a war?
Hmm.
You know, which to me is just like punching you in the face of like, this is what generations had to deal with in comparison. You know, for example, in 2020 and in COVID-19 times and lockdown times, like most of us are really sad that we're bored, like that we're sitting on a couch. And yes, it sucks. You know, a lot of really extreme punishment in jails. If you've already been a fucking criminal and then you get into jail and then you're also bad in jail, you get into
Solitary
solitary
confinement.
confinement, which is essentially, why don't you go here and be super bored? You don't get to talk to anybody. You have this like total like sensory starvation.
Well, that is also not to say that people are not dying from corona. Like that's not like being bored isn't the biggest. Like people are dying, and that's
Yes.
fucking horrible and horrifying.
Yeah, and you have to recognize that, you know, most of anime kind of came out of the post-war era and is kind of focused on the idea of nuclear disaster.
Hmm.
And you know, Japan is the only country in the world that has had two cities who have been struck by an atom bomb
Yeah.
and experienced that kind of destructive chaos. Like that's not just bored on the couch or like 3% of the population who gets it is dying. That's like so many people in a very short period of time dying and other people watching people die or being horrifically injured in
And
a
then lasting radiation effects and like
for years.
years and years and years.
So I think there's a lot of those anxieties in this film, and then also those ideas that are really topical of like social media and your social media life versus reality, reliance on technology, and technology versus sort of analog ways of doing things, which also ties in this idea of older generations and younger generations. And so when she's like, "We're at war," and this little kid's like, "What's a war?"
Yeah.
You know, like it really, really hits home. And then she gets on the phone and she starts like rallying the troops in whatever ways she can. She's
Yeah.
like, I might be too old to go out and fight, but I can make some phone calls.
Hmm.
And she even says like it's just like at the in the war.
Yeah. And I thought that scene when she starts rallying the troops was really awesome because she has to have Love Machine and why this is all crazy explained to her.
Yeah.
And I think it's Kenji that explains it to her, right? And he's like, "Look, this thing is fucking shit up." Not paraphrasing,
Sure.
but it'd be hilarious if that was in the script.
Yeah, in the subtitles as
Yeah.
well.
But he's like, "This is really affecting people, and that's why your family isn't here right now. Is
Yeah, because a
because this
bunch of family
AI."
members like I want to say briefly that you get this really interesting scene of watching what's getting fucked up in the world.
Hmm.
So you see all the things that are going wrong and it's intercut with these really personal moments of family members calling other family members and being like, I can't make it there.
Yeah, I can't make it there. The traffic, like everything is shut down. all this other stuff is shut down. The water is off. The electricity is out. Blah blah blah. All this stuff is fucked
And
up.
it just keeps cutting between the two. And I thought that was such a brilliant way to deal with it, because you're like, big world, small world, big world, small
Hmm.
world.
Yeah, and then once Granny, I feel like, understands what's at stake, that's when she kicks into action. She's like, oh,
Yes.
this isn't just like a malfunction of technology. This is malevolent, and this is war, and I'm straight up calling some motherfuckers. So I think she calls like all of her family members that are at work in like the fire department, it looks like,
Yeah, she has
maybe
a bunch of
EMTs or
first
something.
responder family members,
Yeah,
apparently.
and I think she even like calls some members of the local government and was talking to them about what they need to do or
Yeah.
rallying and stuff. And I thought that was so cool because the
It was
rest of the
so cool.
family, like her daughters and sons, are just like kind of the not really doing anything. They're kind of like, what the fuck's going on? And, like, they're freaking
Yeah.
out, and the kids they don't understand at all. Like you have to explain what war is to one of them. So
But here's this woman who definitely lived through World War II, and she goes, oh,
yeah.
I know what's happening right now, and I know what I need to do, which is mobilize everyone I know who is capable of being helpful in this situation. And that's what I can do.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, yes, Cranny.
So after she pulls the lance on Wabi Ske, Kazuma and Kenji kind of formulate a plan for how to defeat Love Machine. They use an old tactic from their lineage's previous wars or conflicts or
Yeah,
something. It has something to do with that samurai armor. The details are a little foggy for me. I can't
me
quite
too.
remember.
Like, I was watching it and thought, like, should I commit this to memory? I was like, no, this is too much.
It did have to do with some kind of battle strategy that their family used back in
Yes,
some old war. And they were like, it happened back then. Why couldn't it work right now?
sure.
I remember that being like the exact line on how to trick Love Machine. So all of the members of the family do what they can to make this digital cyber war happen. Like one of the cousins works at a computer place or something, and he gets an enormous mega computer. One of the other guys brings a power generator that's a boat, and that's how they're going to generate or use this computer and use it to uh, power the computer, the supercomputer. One of the other guys has like all these headsets, and it's a really complicated, super organized attack on this Love Machine AI, because it has to be. And every member of the family, well, all the guys, it seems like, are contributing what they can
Hmm.
to make it happen. One person brings a bunch of ice to keep the supercomputer
It
cooled.
was the mustachioed man,
Ah, okay. The
um,
squid guy.
the squid guy who owned the boat. He was like, no, I've got some ice on the boat. It just happened to have huge blocks of
Yeah.
ice on the boat.
Yeah. And so I thought that was really cool because it's like we're all contributing to this too. Like Granny's contributing in the way that she knows how. All these other people are contributing in the ways that they know how, because the kids are like, this is how we need to defeat and delete
Sure,
possibly
why not?
this AI. And it's something that you guys don't understand, but we do,
Yeah.
because we're in this Oz world a lot more than you are.
And this AI starts out as just being sort of a takeover of Kenji, the sort of main character,
Hmm.
main character's avatar. And then he starts kind of quote unquote eating other avatars, and he becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until he takes on the form of looking like giant monster
Yeah,
collage.
demonic looking
Yeah,
thing.
made of all these sort of avatars. In the end game, there's this sort of moment where you're like, well, all is almost lost. Like, what's gonna happen? And we've had this game come up a couple of times, which is the Koi
The
Koi.
koi koi.
Um, and they realize the AI loves puzzles,
Hmm.
loves games. So instead of trying to fight it in this, straight on battle brute strength sort of situation, let's challenge it to a battle of wits, to a game.
But
But
also, what's at stake in this final battle with the game of Koi Koi is Love Machine, the AI, has taken over a satellite, is it?
yeah, it does get to that point where he's taken over a satellite that has some kind of nuclear capabilities.
Well, I think it was that the satellite, the AI aimed it at nuclear plants. And if it hit those plants, it would obviously cause like a huge nuclear explosion. And it at first has nuclear plants targeted all over the world. And then in their first, combat confrontation with Love Machine, and they defeat it, quote unquote, defeat it with 13 minutes left, I believe it was, something like that. And it knocks the satellite off course for all of the nuclear plants that it was aiming to hit. And instead of the nuclear plants, it's aiming for the town that the family is in.
Well, it's like literally their house.
Yeah.
It's going for.
I know exactly the timeline of events now.
Okay.
So the clock is going down, and I think that's after the physical battle.
Yeah.
And then once the clock is going down from 2 hours is the Koi Koi match.
Yes.
And then it's all the people donating their avatars, and then that's when John and Yoko show back up. Thanks for nothing, fucking John and Yoko. You pieces of shit. You didn't guard anything.
And also you ruined the Beatles.
Yeah. True. So then she wins the Koi Koi match. It stops at around 13 minutes, and then it restarts. And then what happens is Kenji has to break in solving a bunch of different puzzles.
That's right.
To get the key to knock the satellite off its course.
Yes.
Because the satellite is still hurtling towards their house. And he has to solve a bunch of puzzles in order to get it off.
Yeah, he's trying to get like a password to override it.
Yeah.
And it's like this password in Oz that the AI keeps changing when he gets the answer. And then physical violence finally pays off.
Yeah, and it leads to one of the greatest animated faces I've ever seen is when Kenji is trying to solve all of these problems and his eyes get extremely wide. There's like 56 sweat drops all over his face. And his eyes are just all googly crazy. He's like,
and then his nose bleeds for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Basically.
I forgot about the nosebleed. Yeah, and then so he keeps solving the riddles or puzzles, math problems. And then it finally knocks it off its course.
But then part of that is like,
oh right,
he's kind of getting it, and then Cosma comes back
and beats the shit out of the original stolen avatar.
Because Wabisuke is like, his armor's down right now. Like, you can get in there, you can go, because he came back to the family and was trying to like hack his own AI.
Yeah,
which opened up a time for Cosma to come and kick him in the face.
Yeah,
as an avatar.
Honestly, during that final battle, I was very confused about what Wabisuke was supposed to be doing. He's like slamming on the keyboard, and I'm like, what is his purpose here?
I agree. And then as soon as he was like, I got his defenses down, I was like, that's enough motivation for me. It's like, sure, why not? Getting his defenses down.
Yeah. So then the satellite crashes nearby, but not on their house. There's still a huge aftershock that affects all of them. And the day is saved. And then there's a funeral for Granny.
Yeah, very well attended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everyone in town was at
popular lady.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I thought was kind of unnecessary.
All right.
One of the spinning plates that fell for me.
Okay.
When we find out that Granny had written a death note, not a suicide note, just like a if something ever happens to me note. And she just talks about Wabisuke, the black sheep of the family, the entire time.
Yeah.
And then this is read to the entire family, except for Wabisuke.
Yeah. I mean, as we were watching that scene, I was like, man, this is just a love letter to Wabiske, and everybody else that was like a loyal, quote unquote, loyal family member has to feel really like besmirched and left out. Just well, I guess go fuck me then, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even get a nary of a mention in this. You fucking this guy that s- stole your money and went to America, and you know.
And then speaking of weird family relationships, and Wabiske is talking about Natsuki's weird crush on him.
I think that's like a childhood crush
Sure.
type thing that you know you don't know that it's weird until you're older and people are like Natsuki used to
Yeah.
have such a crush on Wabiske.
I totally understand what you're saying. But at the beginning of the film, like both of us were like, "Oh, she wants to fuck her uncle."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Like neither of us
she's the
like it
only one that
wasn't.
doesn't really treat him as a black sheep. She's excited when he's around. She's like Wabiske.
Yeah. And excited to the point where both of us were like kind of making fun of it. And we didn't see it coming that that was actually going to be a plot point of any kind. That we find out that she wrote an essay in school called My Uncle and I,
Yeah.
you know? Um, have you ever had like a weird crush on a cousin or some family member later you realized was like not okay that you cringe about
Well,
now?
yeah, definitely. Like when I was like 4.
Sorry. The way you said that was like, yeah, like of course I did. You'd be fucking lame if
Have
you
you
didn't.
seen my family? Fucking hotties.
The
I
way
feel like
you
that's normal though. Did you not
No,
have
no,
any?
I think it's normal too.
Yeah.
I think the way you were looking at me while I was finishing up that question, I was like, he's gonna think I'm a weirdo. Like that's what your face was doing for me. And at the end
Mhm.
you were like, well, of course, dude. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
And I feel like everybody has that, you know? But
Who did you have a crush on in your family?
I had two, I think. One on my
Oh,
dad's side and one on my mom's side.
even it out. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, I gotta
Yeah,
spread the fucking love around. You
sure.
know, the incestual love.
Go on, tell me more.
One of them was I think my cousin Michelle on my mom's side. She was like really, really pretty. Like even my cousin on my dad's side had a crush on her, and they were like the same age,
Oh God.
but like they're not related at all because he's from my dad's side and she's from my mom's side.
Okay. How did they ever meet?
Family parties.
Oh, you had family parties with like both sides?
Yeah, my family would
I'm sorry,
have.
I'm just realizing this, maybe my family's weird.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe mine is. I don't know.
Okay.
So my family would have like holiday parties and family friends, and then all members of the family would come and
Wow.
party and have a good time. So they met there and stuff.
My sides of the family were very segregated.
Huh.
And then my parents divorced, so maybe I should have expected that.
I don't know. Now I'm questioning is my shit weird?
I just would be
Is my shit
so.
weird? The anime podcast, anime movie podcast at gmail.com.
I just think it's really weird that like somebody kind of distant on one side would meet somebody kind of distant on the other side, and that would be like a common thing where they'd both be at the same party.
Yeah. No, that happened all the time at
Okay.
our. I also have a huge family.
I thought you were about to say like I also have a huge crush on this other
Oh,
family
no.
member.
my on my
Right now,
on my
today.
dad's side, my grandfather had like 12 brothers and sisters, and then they all have kids, and it's just enormous.
Sounds Catholic.
Yeah, and I think it's something kind of similar on my mom's side, but it gets a little sketchy because my mom's parents got divorced, and then I don't know who's related to who, and so like
Your mom's parents got divorced
yeah,
when
so,
they were younger or like in more modern times?
when they were younger,
Because it's not super common for
yeah,
that generation.
yeah, but there have been people that come up to me, especially on my dad's side, that are just like, "Hey, I'm your cousin," and I'm just like, "Okay, you could
And I
totally
want
be
to fuck
lying."
you.
You're the cousin I have a crush on. Nice to meet you.
It's an icebreaker, you know?
So then Granny has a funeral.
Yes.
Enough of this incest talk.
Yeah, let's get away from this real quick.
Granny has a funeral. The whole town comes. Natsuki's playing the ukulele. They're singing happy birthday because I guess she died like a day before her birthday, it seems like.
That's right, yeah.
Everyone really just kind of forgives Kenji for the lies that he told and like accidentally
the lies
hacking.
that somebody else told.
Yeah, the lies
him.
that were told about him that he kind of was an accomplice in, and then accidentally bringing the world to a standstill with this accidentally figuring out a puzzle problem thing. And they're like, so are you gonna date Natsuki or what? Like, I know that it was a lie, but you guys should totally make it happen. And then he's like, what? And I fucking hate that.
And then his nose bleeds everywhere.
Yeah, his nose bleeds as Natsuki's trying to kiss him. And he's because he's so nervous.
Sure.
Grow a pair.
It's bad nosebleed if you can't get it to stop in 24 hours.
I mean, it looked like he had an aneurysm when he was like trying to solve all those problems. Like,
Yeah.
That kid looked rough, dude. That was no ordinary nosebleed. That's his brain rushing out of his nose. But yeah, it did. I think that the nosebleed thing is I've seen it before in anime when boys are nervous around girls for some reason. And apparently it's a real thing that could happen. I read about it a while ago, and it is a like nervous thing for some people. They'll just get a nosebleed. Is there anything else that we haven't covered really? The soundtrack I felt was pretty cool. When it's in Oz, it's really digital and techno-y.
Yeah.
And when it's not, I recall when they first get to Natsuki's family's countryside house, the music was awesome. I wrote down it's like wonderment, and there's like this huge score that's meant to bring out like, oh, this is such a great and cool place to be. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then when you're in Oz, it's like the music on the menu was not the greatest.
No, I felt like going into Oz, it felt very like near future infomercial, which I kind of liked.
Kind of like Tomorrowland and Disneyland.
Yeah, and it made me not trust it, which I thought was great. I think that this plays a lot of anxieties about VR and the virtual world and reliance on technology and avatars and, you know, lying through facades. And I think that everything about the way like that music played into that kind of fake infomercial made me immediately go, this is selling something to me and I don't like it, you know? So I don't know. I think that I love Hosoda as a director from all the films that I've seen. I think that, you know, while there are a bunch of plates spinning in directions and some of them drop, most of them don't.
Hold on. I don't know if you ever answered me when I said that. Did you feel the same way that Natsuki disappears through the middle of the film?
That Natsuki does?
Yeah.
Well, I think she's in mourning for a huge part of the center of the film. I was fine with not knowing what she was doing for a while because as far as I knew, she was real sad.
Okay. Are you happy with the relationship that forms between Natsuki and Kenji?
I've been more surprised.
I feel like it kind of comes out of nowhere. Like,
oh, okay.
I thought it's not really mentioned that he has a crush on her or anything, or that she has a crush on him when they first meet at the beginning of the
There's
movie.
a bunch of like nervous stuff where his friend Sakuma is like, oh, like you guys are totally gonna sleep together, and he's like, duh.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he's like, but she's the prettiest girl in school, and this is kind of already implied thing. So to me, it's not like totally out of left field for me.
I felt like it was a little out of left field.
Okay.
Because at the beginning, she's like, do either one of you want to come to this thing and be my fiance?
Sure.
And then Kenji, or either one of you want to come to it? And I think Kenji says yes at first, and then she's like, "You have to meet my family." And then he says no, and then what's his friend's name?
Sakuma.
Sakuma says like, "I'll go," and then for some reason he backs out, and then Kenji's like, "Okay, I'll go," and then they go and they fake that they're engaged, and Kenji's like, "What? I don't know what's going on here." And I mean, it could be that he, like, he thinks he thinks that she is pretty, but like, were they friends beforehand?
No, it sounded to me like she was kind of a popular girl and he's not in a popular group.
Mm,
So I think the idea is at the beginning, like he pre has a crush on her.
yeah.
He like, and then over the course of the movie, she develops feelings for him because they go through all these intense experiences together and they're out in the countryside together and whatever.
Yeah, but I don't know where she would have developed feelings for him because it starts with like her lying to the grandma, like, "Hey, this is my beau,"
Yeah.
um, and then Granny dies,
Although
and this is
Granny seems to think highly of him by
oh
the
yeah,
end of
for
it.
sure, because they even play a private game of koi koi,
Yeah.
um, but that's where I feel like Natsuki disappears, and then when she comes back, it's not like they have much time spent together
Mm.
because then she starts because he's fighting the AI with all the other like dudes in the family, and then she comes in and fights the AI with Koi Koi, and then Kenji comes back in and beats the AI. It's not like they were doing it together, like they weren't a team, it seemed like.
But he bonded with her family, and a lot of what he was doing was to protect her family. And her family is very important to her. So I feel like at the end of this film, they're not suggesting that they've fallen in love. This
Yeah.
isn't like the Disney like, and now this is true love forever. It's more like, hey, you guys should try and date now.
Yeah, you think the
It's
family's
like,
like, "Give this kid a chance, he's been
yeah,
dope."
yeah,
He
try it.
just saved the world.
Yeah, like so I think that they've had this like intense experience together, even though they didn't, spend all that time together. They still like saved the world and both of them had a part in it. And there's that sort of like moment after the big like thing is over and the relief that kind of makes you go like, I feel
I
so
just gotta
much.
fuck somebody.
Okay. Okay.
I got a nut.
Jesus Christ. So so the fact that like nobody is saying now they're in love and they're forever people,
Hmm.
makes me go, okay, yeah, I'd buy that they might want to date each other.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm a little less bought in on it than you are, I think, but your argument on it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. All right, shall we get to cranking these amps?
Yeah, let's do it.
For Summer Wars, I'm going 9.5 out of 11.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I thought the animation was really cool, especially the world of Oz. I thought that was really interesting and unique and innovative.
Mm-hmm.
Innovative. And the story was great. Like I said, it's juggling so many different things, and only a few things I feel like don't really uh, pay off or make it for me.
Yeah.
But I still really enjoyed it. I will say, caveat to this cranking.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the chatter that I've seen about this movie is that it is a complete ripoff of Hosoda's earlier film, the Digimon movie.
I'm sorry, it's a complete ripoff of his own movie.
Yes,
Okay.
a lot of the complaints about it are like, this is just the Digimon movie over again.
Mm.
So it begs the question, like, can you rip off your own? Maybe not, but it is just like, that's a problem a lot of people have had with this movie.
Okay.
I haven't seen the Digimon movie since I was 10 or 11, so I can't really speak to that. But if we ever do review it and we're like, oh yeah, I see what people are talking about with that, it might bump the rating down a little bit.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but as of right now, 9.5 out of 11. Also, I have one fun trivia fact.
All right.
While creating the 500 storyboards for this movie,
Uh-huh.
Hosoda created all of them at Denny's.
What? What in
Over multiple days, it said. He fucking was... Okay, this is the fact that this is how it's written.
cite your source?
IMDb.
Okay.
Mamoru Hosoda completed all 500 pages of storyboards for the film at Denny's, working in hugely long 12 and 16-hour shifts. That's all it says.
Okay.
So it seems like he was there multiple days.
I just want to know if it was the same Denny's. I want to know if it was a Denny's in America or if it was a Denny's in Japan. Do they have Denny's in Japan? Like this just, it opens up so many questions for me that I want answers to.
Let me see. Are there Denny's in Japan? Denny's is one of Japan's most popular family restaurants.
Oh.
The locations in Japan differ from the locations in America.
What?
In Japan,
of course it does. It's a different place.
In Japan, customers can enjoy uniquely Japanese menu items.
Oh.
Its offerings consist of simple and satisfying Japanese dishes. So there you go.
Very, very interesting.
What is your amp going to?
It's a 10, Joe.
Oh, a 10 out of 11.
It is a 10. I almost gave it a 10.5, and then I remember just how many plates it did drop.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I couldn't quite give it a perfect score.
Yeah, I find like while we talk through these, my scores get lower because I initially, after watching it, I was like, that's a 10 out of 11.
Mm.
And then as we talk it, I was like, I'll knock it down 0.5.
I almost gave it an 11.
Mm.
Well, at the end of watching it, I was like, I think I could give this film an 11. And then after a little bit of time of thinking about it, it was moderated down to a 10.
Still a very high score.
Still a very high score.
From both of us.
I think that Hosoda has a really amazing way of bringing in those really comedic moments, mixing in some very like sci-fi, cool, interesting, topical ideas that explore the anxieties of humankind in the technological world. And then at the same time, bring in these like very heartfelt, relatable, funny moments that are laugh out loud funny, not just chuckle funny. And also manages to have these like really beautiful emotional moments. Like I just think he weaves it together so well and so beautifully. And this film is a really, really good showcase of that. And it was a pleasure to watch, and I would absolutely watch it again. And I would absolutely recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, this is one that I feel like it's so good on its own that it's not like, oh, if you're a fan of blah.
Right. Yeah.
Only these specific like I think that this movie could be enjoyed by a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
And it's just a really well done film.
Agreed. And this has been the Anime Movie Podcast, The AMP. If you have any film recommendations or something that you'd like us to review, email us, theanimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or send a message to us on our Instagram, which is @theanimemoviepodcast. Thank you again for listening. I've been Joe.
I've been Kat, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram @theanimemoviepodcast, and you can reach out via email at theanimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.